Mr. Chairman, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all. And Joe Mizzi, I think he should have got his cake here. Each and every one of us should have had at least a piece of his birthday cake, but still we'll forgive him. So, tourism in the Mediterranean, and it is very difficult, if not impossible, to separate one from the other. Why is it difficult to separate tourism from the Mediterranean? Because tourism in the Mediterranean is one of the most important economic activities in the region. A region which represents the top global destination, hosting more than 30% of world tourism arrivals, most of which are coming from Europe. And how is this 30% of global tourism arriving into the Mediterranean distributed? In 2012, the northern Mediterranean countries, mostly Spain, France, and Italy, accounted for some 23% of the total global market, whilst on the southern part of the Mediterranean, the southern countries, including Algeria, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Palestine, Syria, and Tunisia, accounted for only 7%. But still, in spite of this disparity between the northern and the southern countries in the Mediterranean, all of them regard tourism as one of their main economic activities. For Malta, tourism is not simply an economic activity, but I would rather dare say that it is an economic lifeline, because the full economic impact of tourism in Malta represents around 25% of our annual GDP, obviously confirming tourism's key economic importance for the Maltese islands. Last year's performance was the best ever so far, with a 10% growth in arrivals, a similar growth in bed nights, and a corresponding 9% growth in revenues as well. Our arrivals last year hit 1.6 million, which is saying that for every Maltese, we got to Malta for tourists. And one of the positives about this growth was the fact that most of it happened during the shoulder and the winter months. Tourism is a very dynamic industry, and the tourism industry in Malta, as anywhere else, is continuously changing. We remember times that Malta used to depend almost entirely on price-sensitive tour operating groups staying in mass seaside accommodation. Today, more than 50%, actually 52% of our tourists come as individual travelers, and mostly they book directly via internet. There was also a time when Air Malta and the legacy airlines used to carry all the passengers to Malta. Today, 43% of the travel is done through low-cost carriers. And talking about connectivity today, Malta is connected to more than 83 routes. More than 80% of our tourists are coming from Europe. But still, this is where we see an opportunity. The fact that most of our tourists are coming from Europe, we see an opportunity because there are various opportunities outside Europe as well. Within the Mediterranean itself, and we're talking about connectivity, not even the Mediterranean countries are connected between them. If anyone wants to go to Morocco, if anyone wants to go, we have to travel first to Europe and then come back again to another Mediterranean neighboring country. Within the Mediterranean, there is the Arab market. Close to the Mediterranean, there is the Middle Eastern and the Gulf markets. And then there is the enormous potential of the US and the emerging long-haul brick markets. As a matter of fact, we have already started to make our presence felt more in the US, Russia, and very soon, hopefully, also in China. Obviously, the main obstacle to penetrate these markets is the visa issue. The visa, which is aimed at restricting mostly immigration into Europe. As a result, it is not only discouraging inter-Mediterranean flows between southern Mediterranean countries and northern Mediterranean countries, but is also inhibiting tourism from the Middle East, Gulf, and the BRIC regions. Seasonality. Seasonality is one of the chronic weaknesses in most of the Mediterranean destinations. And in order to reduce the seasonality issue and reposition Malta as an all-year-round profitable operation, we need to go for more winter products such as nautical, medical, sports, fashion, religious, cultural, and cruise tourism. As I mentioned earlier on, with the seasonality gap has been reduced last year because, as I said, growth has happened also during the shoulder and the winter ones as well. Obviously, any destination has got to be competitive, and competitiveness is always a decision factor in choosing a destination. Incentivizing competitiveness does not actually mean subsidizing it, but rather supporting it. And in this respect, the government has taken a number of initiatives, and if you allow me, I may mention some of them. In its first budget, government increased the tourism allocation and is encouraging more joint public-private marketing. We believe that government should act as a facilitator rather than a regulator. And government, in fact, has set up a number of action teams with participation of ministries, departments, and the private sector to address issues having a direct impact on the sector's competitiveness. We all remember the industry outcry before the elections about the problem of government-induced costs, and concerned that government-induced costs weaken tourism's competitiveness, government will be reducing the energy costs for the sector as of March next year. As an island disconnected from the mainland, Malta depends totally on air and sea accessibility, to which we've already referred, connectivity. And to improve accessibility, both the Malta Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Tourism continue to increase air seat capacity by encouraging new airlines to fly to Malta and trying to convince existing airlines to open new routes and to add more seats on their existing routes. Managing accessibility towards winter and developing a winter product are two of our top priorities on our agenda. We also have to develop what we are referring to as winter markets, because in as much as we want to develop our winter products, we realize that there are some markets where we can sell Malta much better than in other all year round or summer markets as well. And talking about the product, government is also totally committed to improve ground transport infrastructure, to upgrade our tourism education and training, mostly through ITS, and to improve quality indicators such as policy rules and regulations, safety and security, health and hygiene, and public cleanliness. Today, when we discuss sea travel, we are not referring to accessibility or connectivity, but to maritime cruises and yachting. The Mediterranean is now the second largest world cruising zone after the Caribbean. It has 64 companies with more than 200 ships carrying 3 million cruise passengers on 100 different cruise routes. And even though the sector was negatively hit by the world economic crisis, by technical problems, by fuel price hikes, accidents, and so on, cruise companies are still investing massively in new models of ships with impressive tonnage and the luxuries that we've never seen as yet. To a lesser extent than cruising, Maltese yachting is also developing very, very rapidly. This is mainly due to the saturation of harbors, mostly in the northwest Mediterranean. We are working in one of the world's most rapidly changing industries within the world's #1 tourism region. Global tourism is set to continue growing, and the Mediterranean will continue to receive increased inflows of visitors in the coming years. This calls for constant investment, removing of unnecessary barriers, innovative products and services, and enhanced visitor management, all of this within the context of sustaining tourism growth while preserving that which makes the Mediterranean attractive. At the end of the day, tourism has got its benefits and tourism has got its costs. And it is all about maximizing on the economic benefits and minimizing mostly on the environmental costs. The challenge is huge, but I am sure you will agree that the benefits are very enticing because they are even much greater. Thank you very much.